In the last video, we talked about SOAP web services, and in this video, you'd start with an important concept called REST. What is REST? What is REST all about? REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is a term which is coined by Roy Fielding. If you remember, Roy Fielding is the guy who also developed HTTP protocol. The key thing about REST services is the fact that they would want to make best use of HTTP. Okay, what is HTTP? Let's take a quick overview. Let's go to Google. I'm typing www.google.in. I would want to search for what is a web service. The browser comes back with a response, and I can choose one of these links and click it, and then I can choose any of the links which are present in here as well. So this is how we typically browse the web, right? This is how we browse the internet. While we were browsing, there was a lot of things which were happening in the background. This is how a simple interaction happens between the browser and any of the servers of the websites you are visiting. For example, Google. What happens is when I enter a URL in the browser, a request is being sent to the website server, and the website server responds back with a response. The important thing that we would need to talk about is what is the format of this request and response. These request and response are in a format which is defined by HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. When I type in a URL in the browser, it sends a GET request to that server. The server responds back with a HTTP response containing the HTML. So I'm sending a GET request, and the server is sending back a response, a HTTP response containing the HTML. The browser looks at that response, takes the HTML, and displays it on the screen. Let's say there's a form I'm filling up with a list of details, and I click the submit button. In those kind of scenarios, typically we are creating a post request. HTTP defines the headers which are present in the request and the body of the request. Also, along with the response, there are headers and also the body. In addition to the request header and the request body, HTTP also defines something called request methods. You can indicate what action you are doing by using the HTTP request methods. Get, I'm trying to get the details of something. Post, I'm trying to create something. Put, I'm trying to update something. A HTTP response, on the other hand, will also include a HTTP response status code. Was it successful? Was it page not found 404? And things like that. Roy Fielding said, why do we need to reinvent the wheel? Why don't we make use of HTTP to develop our web services as well? And that's where the concept of RESTful web services comes in. RESTful web services try to define services using the different concepts that are already present in HTTP. The most important abstraction in REST is something called a resource. A resource is anything that you would want to expose to the outside world through your application. For example, when I talk about the to-do management application, the users are a resource. Who is using it? Ranga is a resource. What are the to-dos also can be a resource. A specific to-do is a resource. A list of to-dos is also a resource. When we are talking about developing RESTful services, we are always thinking about resources. What are the resources in my application? A to-do, a user, a list of to-dos. What we do is we would assign a URI to the resource. For example, the URI to the resource Ranga is /user/Ranga. The URI to all the to-dos that Ranga has is /user Ranga to-dos. The URI to the first resource that Ranga has is your user Ranga todos /1. So what we do is we assign a URI to each resource. REST does not worry about how you are representing your resource. Is it XML? Is it HTML? Is it JSON? That does not really matter. The most important thing is the fact that you define your resource and perform the actions on the resource using whatever facilities that are provided by HTTP. Just like we discussed earlier, if I want to create a resource, I would do a post to /users. If I want to delete something, do a delete to /users/1. Get /users. Get /users/1. The important thing about REST is the fact that you have to think in terms of resources. What are the different resources that are present in your application that you would want to expose to other applications? And the second thing is make use of HTTP. If you want to do any operations on the resource, you have to use the verbs which are already specified by HTTP. Get, put, post, patch, and things like that. In REST, we don't really have any restriction on the data exchange format. While JSON is very popular, REST does not worry whether you're using JSON, XML, or whatever format you would want to use. Important thing is transport is always HTTP. REST is completely built on top of HTTP. There is no standard service definition which is attached with REST. That can be a drawback in some scenarios because when a client wants to consume a service, it needs to understand the request format and response format. So a service definition will be really useful. WADL, it's called Web Application Definition Language. WADL is one of the formats in which you can specify your RESTful web services. It has not become very popular. Another option is Swagger. Swagger is gaining a lot of popularity, and we would use Swagger in this course for defining our RESTful services. REST focuses on your resources and how do you perform actions on them, making best use of HTTP.